If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust TV, reaching you live from our studios here in the nation's capital. It's now time for us to look at the second discussion on the program, Talking Election Matters. Now, the hands of the clock of next year's election is chimed at midday on Saturday, February 26th, with the provision of timelines for electoral activities by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, which was sequel to the assent of the Electoral Act 2022 by President Muhammadu Buhari. Consequently, the electoral body reviewed the timetable of activities for the election and scheduled the presidential and National Assembly elections, as well as the governorship and state houses of assembly polls for Saturday, February 25th, 2023, and Saturday, March 11th, 2023, respectively. Now, we are being joined in the studio by the INEC National Commissioner in charge of Voter Education and Publicity, Festus Okoye. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Now, well, we've seen that there's an amendment to the Electoral Act, and then, of course, that is definitely going to have an implication on your preparation ahead of the 2023 general elections. So, in line with this new electoral amendment, in what ways would you say that is going to, affect your preparation?
Well, the National Assembly made fundamental alterations to the electoral legal framework. And some of these alterations are germane and really fundamental to the work of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now, some of the amendments that were made in the new electoral legal framework were amendments that were proposed by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Some of the amendments also arose from the judgments of various levels of courts, in terms of courts that dealt with pre-election matters and those that were dealt with election petitions up to the Supreme Court. Some of the amendments were also proposed by the National Assembly themselves, based on the experiences as political actors out there in the field. So some of these amendments, we believe, we add credibility to the electoral process and also aid the work of the commission. For instance, if you look at the amendment made to the new section 29 of the Electoral Act, for instance, it says that political parties that conduct party primaries must submit the names and personal particulars of their validly nominated candidates at least 180 days before the date fixed for the election. Now, as you know, the Independent National Electoral Commission has fixed February 25th, 2023 as the date for the presidential and National Assembly elections, and March 11th as the day for the governorship and state assembly elections. So the implication of this is that when political parties submit this list, we will have at least almost a 6-month window within which adjudication in relation to pre-election matters will take place. Prior to this particular amendment, you'll find a situation where pre-election matters will dovetail into the election itself. The commission will conduct elections, petitions will go to election petitions tribunals, and pre-election matters are still ongoing. So we believe that with this particular window, with this particular period, it's possible to determine most of the pre-election matters before the actual election itself, so that the Nigerian people will know who the candidates are before we go into the election. Secondly, one of the other germane things relating to pre-election matters is the fact that the state high courts and the high court of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, have been divested of jurisdiction to hear and determine pre-election matters. It is now the exclusive responsibility of the Federal High Court to hear and determine pre-election matters. Why is it important? This is important because prior to this particular amendment, we had situation, for instance, in Anambra State, where we had party primaries in Anambra State, but pre-election matters relating to the party primaries that took place in Anambra were being adjudicated upon in different parts of the country. We had the matter that arose in Jigawa State. There was one in Bauchi State. There was one in Delta State. There was one in Imo State, and so on and so forth. In fact, in almost all the geopolitical zones, we had courts hearing pre-election matters that arose from Anambra State, knowing that they don't have both the geographical and substantive jurisdiction to entertain some of these matters. So the National Assembly has more or less taken care of that by zeroing on the Federal High Court alone to hear and determine pre-election matters. So many of these provisions will definitely aid the Commission in conducting a good election.
Okay. Now,
yes.
How prepared, is INEC, to conduct the 2023 elections? Because, a lot of people would think the transmission of result is a game changer, but we saw some little logistic issues with the Anambra elections and the FCT council polls. Will this be a problem, in 2023?
Well, this particular commission learns from every election. We are not dogmatic in terms of our processes and our procedures. And we are not defensive when we have not done well in relation to the conduct of any particular election. So what we try to do is to learn from our mistakes, learn from the weaknesses in the system, and then try to improve with every election. And I can assure you that with every election we have conducted, we have continued to improve. Now, the Commission has introduced a lot of fundamental changes in the way elections are conducted in Nigeria. One, because we've been having very serious problems with the nomination processes of political parties, we decided to introduce an online nomination portal. What this has done is that it has prevented a situation where political parties come to the gate of the Independent National Electoral Commission to come and ventilate their anger and their grievances. Sometimes you have a situation where a political party will be factionalized. There will be a faction at the state level and a faction at the national level. And when it is time to submit the names and personal particulars of nominated candidates, all the factions will come to the Independent National Electoral Commission with the personal particulars of their nominated candidates.
Yes.
And there will be fights at the premises of the commission. So what we have done is to introduce a candidates nomination portal. And the moment political parties are done with their party primaries, we now give an access code to only the national chairman of the party, with which they upload the list and personal particulars of their nominated candidates to the INEC nomination portal. And this has obviated all the fights and all the challenges we've been having. So we've solved that particular problem. We also solved the problem relating to domestic election observers and international observers, as well as the media. They now apply for accreditation electronically, and we accredit them electronically. And so we don't have all those challenges anymore. One of the other things we have introduced is that we introduced two fundamental and critical innovations in the electoral process. One, we retired the smart card reader as a means of accreditation. And in its place, we introduced what we call the BVAS, the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System. We also introduced the IREV, which enables us to upload polling unit level results into our result viewing portal for public viewing. This has also aided in terms of transparency and engage the Nigerian people in the way we conduct elections. So these two models have enabled us to upscale the issues in the electoral process. But in terms of logistics, and also in terms of our conduct at the polling units, now we are still discussing with the National Union of Road Transport Workers and the National Association of Road Transport Owners and the transporters themselves. This is because if you realize the Commission conducts its activities at various levels. We have our national headquarters. We have offices in all the states of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory. We also have offices in the 774 local government areas of Nigeria. Not only that, we also transact business, so to say, in the 8,809 registration areas or wards. Now, on election day, we have to move our materials from the central bank to the state office, from the state office to the local government offices, from the local governments to the registration areas or to the wards. Sometimes we cluster the wards into what we call super racks, where we house ad hoc staff on Friday before they are deployed on election day. And we have to hire vehicles to move this ad hoc staff to over 176,000 polling units. And sometimes we hire these vehicles and they disappoint you on election day. We have a contract with them. We have an MOU with their various unions, but you can hardly tell what happens on election day. But we are trying to design and devise a new framework on how to deal with issue of transportation and some of the few logistic challenges we've had in the past. And also in terms of the beavers, yes, we had challenges in the Federal Capital Territory, and nobody was happy with the type of challenges we had. We had to go back to the drawing board. We reviewed the situation, reviewed the matter with our ICT department, with all the resident electoral commissioners and so on. And we agreed that the Nigerian people have accepted the beavers as the best means of accreditation in terms of elections. And we re-engineered a few things, and that is why when we conducted the 6 by-elections in Cross River, in Imo, in Ondo, and in Plateau, there was no issue with the beavers. The beavers performed optimally, and we are still working on it. We want a situation where the beavers will be top-notch by the time we get to Ekiti and Ondo governorship elections.
All right. Now, in the 2019 election, we had a situation where a returning officer was forced to declare results,
yes,
at gunpoint, under duress.
Yes.
And at that time, there was deficiency, or I would say lacuna, in our laws for INEC to be able to deal with that. But with the new provision, with the new amendment, there's a provision that takes care of that. How would you, have treated that scenario using this new law?
Well, any law has its own trajectory of responsibility. Yes, the commission went to the National Assembly, both during the public hearing and also during the technical committee sessions, and canvassed that we needed to be given the power to review declarations and returns made by our returning officers, especially when we believe that those returns were made not in consonance with the law, and also were not made voluntarily. And the National Assembly obliged us and also gave us the right to review returns and declarations that are made within a period of 7 days and make a determination whether we needed to conduct a fresh election, or whether we need to conduct election in some places, or whether we need to set aside the election completely. Now, this is important, but we believe that it is a huge responsibility because elections are conducted at the polling units. It is the Nigerian people that have been given the right and the power and the responsibility to vote during elections. So when you want to review a return made by a returning officer, you have to be very, very careful and have to establish a prima facie case that there has been a challenge and there has been an issue before you carry out this review. We have determined as an electoral management body that we are not going to just review, exercise this discretion unilaterally. That before we review, it has to be a review based on the determination by either our resident electoral commissioner, or by the returning officer, or by the returning officer, or by some of our staff who are out there in the field, or through the processes and procedures that we have put in place to monitor the processes and procedures of elections. That we are not just going to make a determination or a review based on petitions by political parties and their candidates, because these petitions will come whether they are backed up by facts or whether they are not backed up by facts. But we are going to carry out the review based on our own assessment of what has transpired with our returning officer and what has transpired in the field. And we insisted that we appoint these collation officers and returning officers based on the powers granted to us by the Constitution and by the law. And it is incongruous for some of these officers we appoint to assume a larger-than-life attitude in terms of the fact that whatever they do can only be reviewed by a court of law. We said, no, these are our appointees. They are appointed by the commission. It is the commission that conducts election, and it is also the commission that should have the right to make a determination whether what the person we appointed has done is right within the framework of the law, and also whether the person did it for voluntarily or not.
So in looking at some of those things to assess, in looking at assessing to determine the action of INEC in that regard, yes, what are those things that we are talking about? What are the things that we are looking at in terms of the practices during elections?
Well, one, you know that the results are are collated at the various levels, at the level of the registration area or wards, at the level of the local governments, at the level of the states, and at the national level. Now, depending on the election, some of these things terminate at the level of the local governments. For instance, if a state constituency has just one local government, at the end of that collation at the registration area, it goes to the local government, and then it veers off, and then there's a declaration and a return. Now, and I'll give you a practical example. We've had situations where a declaration and a return was made by a returning officer when the election had not ended in some local governments. So when that type of thing happens, we should have the right to make a determination on whether the return that has been made conforms to the law. We've also had situations where somebody went and printed results sheets of the commission, and a return was made using a result sheet that did not conform to the one that the commission deployed for that particular election. We've also had situations where some people put a gun on the head of a returning officer and made that returning officer to make a return. That return, as far as we determine, was not made voluntarily. And so when we have this type of issue, we can review and make a determination whether what has happened conforms to the law or not. And also when you have substantial disruption in the electoral process and a return is made, we should have the right to make a determination whether the disruption in some polling units or in some registration areas is such that can affect the outcome of the election. If it is such that can affect the outcome of any election, we will have the right to review such a declaration. Okay. But each case will be determined based on its own peculiarity and the specific issues involved.
Okay, now does this also, just before we go on the break, yes, does it also, has to do with the issues of declaring elections inconclusive and the likes of them?
No. This whole issue about declaring elections inconclusive, I think that there has been misrepresentation and misunderstanding relating to the issue of inconclusive elections. Now, one, the framers of the Nigerian Constitution, in their wisdom, inputted the issue of inconclusive election within the constitutional and legal framework. For instance, for you to be declared as having won a presidential election, you must score majority of votes cast in that particular election, and you must also score a quarter of the votes cast in 2/3 of all the states of the federation. If no candidate meets this threshold, the Constitution itself says that that election is inconclusive and that the Commission shall conduct a second election to determine who the winner of that particular election is. So that is an inconclusive election. Secondly, there is also the situation where if for instance, you have 10 polling units, for instance, in a state, and out of those 10 polling units, we have a total of 10,000 registered voters in those 10 polling units, and then you conduct an election. You didn't succeed in conducting an election in 5 of the polling units because we were not able to deploy as an electoral management body. And then a candidate secures, let's say 3,000 votes. The other candidate secures 2,000 votes. And then you have 5,000 votes remaining in the place where we have not conducted the election. So what we normally do is that you add those 5,000 votes to the person who has lost the election. If you add that vote and it is capable of changing the outcome of the election, then you must go and repeat the election. And the election is inconclusive. But if, for instance, you have 10,000 votes at stake, you didn't conduct election in a place that has just 2,000 votes, and one of the candidates secures 6,000 votes and the other one secures 1,000 votes. What we do is that you carry the 2,000 votes remaining and you give to the person who has lost. If he cannot change the outcome of the election, then you declare the person as a winner, and then you won't have an inconclusive election. So these are based on our processes and our procedures to make sure that ultimately that it is the votes of the people that determines the winner of any election.
All right. Now we'll take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll continue the discussion here on Daybreak. Please stay with us.
The idea was to give the interim government confidence that there is somebody, a military man, who is well known, who can be accepted.
You alluded to the case of your son, Umar Farouk. Are you in touch with him?
Yes, yes. He phones us 2 times, sometimes 3 times in a month.
As always, when I'm talking about late Abiola, I still thank my God for directing me on things to do when he gave me that leadership of this country.
Many of you honest Fulanis, you allow this man to cast aspersion on you.
You know, Zamfara is the mother of all bandits.
The biggest problem, if you permit me, is the fact that we have not been able to get the totality of our citizenry.
It's very, very difficult to have a fixed mind like that this one you will hand over to this person because you think he will do better.
I don't see myself under no circumstance ever leaving APC for another political party.
Here on the Mambila Plateau. And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed.
Most people in Nigeria are ignorant of the fact that employing a child as a maid is in fact against the law.
Access to the textile mill has been very difficult.
I believe, or I think that if you want to make money, it should be in a place where there are not plenty of people that can do what you do.
From the way things are happening now, I don't think the two parties will make an impact.
I've been talking about the updates concerning the campaign of Nigerian Super Eagles in Abuja.
Bola Tinubu has informed President Muhammadu Buhari of his ambition to contest for the position of president.
To be self-reliant, a blind man defies all odds to become a carpenter in Gombe State.
The country is now experiencing a 4th wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with the emergence of the Omicron variant.
Talks are ongoing between NRC management and the union.
Out of the 30 recommendations we made in 19, at this time we consider 11 to be partially implemented and 2 to be implemented. This includes 3 of the mission's priority 7 recommendations. They relate to result collation procedures, result transparency, and improving access to remedy. These progress are encouraging. The passing of the new Electoral Act is a very positive step forward. The new Act comprehensively introduces a range of measures that improve the election process. It is impressive how the National Assembly, INEC, and civil society worked together on this. It is a big achievement that paves the way for improvement in future electoral processes. Also impressive are the steps that INEC has taken, most notably in uploading polling unit results in real time so everyone can see what has been recorded. This is a major advance, making the election process more transparent. INEC has also made more information public on its website and is meeting regularly with stakeholders. These and other actions are really encouraging. However, there are very real challenges ahead for INEC. It needs to improve its operations with better planning, logistics, and oversight. This is necessary to avoid the shortcomings seen in recent elections, which can put people off taking part in elections. Another serious challenge is the introduction of new technology for the accreditation of voters in polling units. We urge INEC to do a comprehensive lessons learned exercise in the use of BVAS and to have an independent evaluation of their use and to develop a full plan accordingly. We have seen a lack of tangible action in regards to women's political participations. On Tuesday, we saw the National Assembly reject bills for increasing opportunities for women in politics. Thus, no legislative measures have been taken for reserved seats or for parties to have internal regulations promoting women in their structures or as candidates. Without serious actions, the potentials of Nigerians' women is really missed.
All right, welcome back. If you're still here with us, this is Daybreak on Trust TV, and Festus Okoye is still here with us in this studio. I'm curious to ask, with the passage of the new Electoral Act, does this have an impact on INEC's decision back in 2017 to have a fixed date, for general elections all over the country?
Well, this issue of a fixed date for a general election is the making of the Independent National Electoral Commission, and we imputed it into our regulations to standardize the way elections are conducted in Nigeria, and also to obviate the fact that some people may claim that the days we fixed took them by surprise. So we made sure that we fixed these days for Nigerians to know that at a particular period in every 4-year period that we are going to have an election. Now, we are going to have this election on the 25th day of February 2023. And that is outside the confines of the days we have already fixed. So this one is just a one-off thing. And then immediately after this 4-year period, after this election, we will return to the dates we have already chosen for the conduct of elections. We chose the 20, as you know, previously we fixed the 18th day of February 2023 as the day for the presidential election. And now we are going to have it on the 25th. By the time we complete this 4-year cycle, we will return to our normal dates that have been fixed by our regulations, because this one is outside those days, based on the fact that the electoral legal framework was not passed on time, and when it was passed, it affected the period. The law says we should give notice of elections, which is 360 days before the date of the election. So it went outside that particular date. That was why we moved the dates just by 1 week. So after this one, we return to our normal beat.
Okay. All right. Now, how important is this, fixed election thing, for INEC and the decision to pick the 18th of February? Why is February 18th so important, in the scheme of things?
No, February 18th is not so important. What is important is that if you look at Section 132, subsection 2, 132, subsection 2 of the Constitution, and Section 178, subsection 2, it has pigeonholed the period for the conduct of elections in Nigeria. And it says that the Independent National Electoral Commission shall conduct elections not earlier than 150 days to the terminal date of the incumbent, and then not later than 30 days to that terminal period. So the period fixed by the Constitution for the conduct of this election have already been circumscribed, and we know that particular circumference. Now, when the Constitution has fixed a date within the constitutional framework itself, the implication is that nobody can abridge that particular date, and nobody can suspend that particular date, and nobody can amend it. So we have to find a date within that particular orbit to fix the days of election, and we decided that this I think the third Saturday of the election year will be the date we will pick for the conduct of elections.
All right. Now the president has signed this Electoral Act. However, he's seeking further amendments to the Electoral Act, specifically as regards the issues of political appointees and all of that. We do not know how soon that will come, but INEC wants the names of nominees at least by June, the names of all nominees of political parties, in the elections and the likes. Now, if there should be any amendment, with regards to that, issues of political appointees, would that affect, the preparation and planning of INEC?
No, it will not affect the preparations of the commission. This is because, for instance, Section 29 of the Electoral Act 2022 says that all political parties must have finished the conduct of their party primaries, and that by the 10th of June, I hope I'm correct, that they must submit the list and personal particulars of their nominated candidates to the Independent National Electoral Commission to conform with the 180 days given by the Constitution. So our timetable follows the law, and all the things we have fixed follows the law. The issue of Section 84 deals with mostly the internal affairs of the different political parties. What the law says, and I think that the political parties are paying attention, the law says that political parties shall conduct valid party primaries, and that it is only political parties that conduct valid party primaries that are entitled to submit the names and personal particulars of their nominated candidates to the Independent National Electoral Commission. Not only that, the law itself also says that if any political party conducts party primaries that is not in conformity with the law and that is not in consonance with the provisions of Section 84, that particular political party shall not submit candidates to the Independent National Electoral Commission in relation to that particular election. So I hope that the political parties are paying attention to the provisions of the law. Not only that, if you also look at the new Electoral Act, it also says that the political parties shall submit their membership register to the Independent National Electoral Commission at least 30 days before the conduct of their party primaries. So and they should submit this electronically and also in the hard copy. So there are so many issues that are in this new electoral legal framework that political parties must pay attention to, because we don't want a situation where we will apply the law as made by the lawmakers themselves, who are politicians, and then will be accused of having shut out a political party. So I think that the legal advisors of the various political parties should sit down with their national executive committees and analyze the provisions of this particular law, look at their obligations under the law, and what they ought to do in, going forward.
Okay, now before we wrap up, this segment on the program, with this new Electoral Act, does this in any way incur extra cost, for INEC?
Well, yes, definitely. There are things that we need to do differently. For instance, in terms of the conduct of party primaries, the Constitution has made it clear that any political party that wants to conduct party primaries through direct means must give opportunity of to all their members to vote, and this voting must take place at the ward level or the registration area level. And as I pointed out, we have a total of 8,809 registration areas in Nigeria. The implication is that we have to send monitors to all these places. But I believe that whatever extra cost that will be incurred has already been accommodated within the framework of the budgetary provision that has been made for the Independent National Electoral Commission in the appropriation bill.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning,
All right.
and we hope to have you next time.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. Well, we've been speaking with the INEC National Commissioner in charge of voter education and publicity, Festus Okoye, giving us perspectives on the impact of the newly amended electoral law on the preparations of INEC ahead of the 2023 general elections. Now, with that, we've come to the end of Daybreak for today. Unfortunately, in case you've missed, part of the show, you can always catch up on our YouTube and also connect with us via our social media platforms. I am Ayuba Ilya.
And I'm Zainab Bella. See you tomorrow.
Bye.